She's a doctor.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dovec, and she's a dietitian.
Hey, I'm Hannah Schuyler, and together we are the Doctor-Dietitian Collab.
And today we are talking about a very exciting topic.
It's a very exciting topic, Dr. Dovec.
Oh, yes. We are talking about insurance.
Yes.
And coverage and out-of-pocket expense and all things. How much is it going to cost me?
It's just enthralling.
It's so enthralling.
Yes.
But you know what? Every time I try to search for something or look for it, there's not a lot of accurate, up-to-date information.
Well, and it's also confusing. When you do find something, it's like, what does that mean?
Totally. And I have been in this space for over 10 years, and it was not until I started private practice that I learned an unbelievable amount. I truly had no clue about some of these terms, about out-of-pocket expense especially, I kind of showed up and somebody took care of the revenue cycle behind me. I thought I knew, but I didn't really.
Right.
So yeah, we have a lot to talk about here, and I hope that this is really helpful for some people to even realize, I might have coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's a good place to start for me is a lot of times we get the question, what insurance do you take?
Yeah. And
I think that really you have to take a step back even further from that is, does your actual plan cover bariatric surgery?
Exactly. And that is step one in knowing this. So if you're I really like Hannah and Betsy, I want to go to BodyByBariatrics. Awesome. Go to BodyByBariatrics.com, click on Get Started Now, and you can request a free insurance check. Yep. So if you're wondering, you just wanted to make it easy, go take a free one. We have a whole team of individuals who verify benefits for us. So it's great. So that's the first thing. Do I have coverage? Because you might have Cigna and your neighbor and your friends and, a billion people who have Cigna. And it's just striking how Cigna is not Cigna across the board.
Right. And then there's because bariatrics falls into a weird category, I feel like, with surgery because it's elective, but then there's medical requirements for it. It's not like a nose job or something, which sometimes that's not just cosmetic, but just, it's not like a cosmetic procedure or something like that. Although some doctors will try to say it is, which is not true.
Yeah.
But they have to opt into coverage for bariatric surgery. And that's where people get confused because they're like, well, I have Aetna, so can I get bariatric surgery? It's well, we have to literally look at your very specific plan from your employer or, typically that we know, Medicare and stuff like that, we know more broadly, but even within, we look at Medicaids and things like that, there's different types of those and some cover and some don't. Depending on what state you're in, your ACA coverage may or may not include weight loss surgery. So, of course, we only look at state of Florida for that one. It does not include bariatric surgery. So if you get a plan from the marketplace, it doesn't cover weight loss. It doesn't cover weight loss surgery.
Exactly. So, and this is confusing. And so, like you just said, it depends on if they have opted in. Who is they? It is your employer.
Yes.
So if you have commercial insurance,
right.
So let's start there. So commercial is your Cigna, Aetna, United, Blue Cross Blue Shield, like Anthem, Primera, Florida Blue, all of those. It depends on if they opted into it. And so what happens is there's these insurance brokers, and these people will go to your employer, your benefits team, HR, and they will sit maybe at the start of the calendar year and say, here are all of your options. Where do you stand on, like I said, do you want to opt into a nose job? And there's a million categories. And one of the biggest ones is actually treatment of obesity.
Right.
And there's medical weight loss. So there's Wegovy, FDA approved for it. And then there's also bariatric surgery. And some of them will have some really wacky parameters. And we're going to go into the nitty gritty of the policies and how that all works. But then they decide, okay, yes, I want to opt into it. And what does that do to me as the employer? How much do I have to pay more? What more of a premium do I need to pay to allow my employees to have this service?
Right.
And so there's still a lot of miseducation. I talked to a broker the other day and it was striking. They're like, well, I think like what 5% of people who have bariatric surgery die. So a lot of employers aren't really, they want their workplace, healthy, but like, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And then it's just pure ignorance, and it's frustrating. It's maddening. It's like, well, why? That's not true. And you're fighting these battles. You're going to these unions, and you're trying to get people to see like, no, if you look at the healthcare economics, if you opt into bariatric coverage, you're actually going to see an improvement in workplace productivity. You're going to see, their time off of work be less because they're not taking time off for doctor's visits or feeling lousy and all of that. And they're just overall a healthier population for not just your workplace, but for your community. It's the right thing to do.
Right. It snowballs into all these other places.
I mean, there's just such an unbelievable, I'm talking like tens of thousands of studies over the last 30, 40 years that just show the efficacy of it. And it's just crazy when you're like, what are you reading or thinking? I talked to some high up executives from a major Florida-based commercial insurance company.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, we really just want patients to the whole eat less, move more. We want diet and exercise, and we want these things. And I just was dumbfounded. I can't even penetrate into this. I'm jumping up and down. I'm as passionate as they come. I don't know what else I can say or do or show or prove that this is how it should be.
Well, and then it's really frustrating because on the flip side of that, if you're really going to actually cover, weight loss and diet and exercise and all of that, you need to be covering dietitians' visits and paying them well enough, because a lot of dietitians just don't take insurance, because the credentialing, and I'm sure we're going to talk about credentialing here, but that's a whole process. And then you find out your reimbursement rates, and a lot of times they find it's not worth it. Well, and then it's like, well, what about exercise? Are you going to pay for my gym membership insurance company, or, are you going to pay for my grocery bills with inflation? There's just all these other things that it's like, well, okay, great. That doesn't help me.
I know.
At all.
And obesity is bankrupting the system.
Well, and of course we know that obesity needs to be treated like a disease, and it's not just everybody can just go out and, eat better and lose weight. It's just not how it works for a lot of people. No. So that's the other side of it. But it's also well, give us a little bit of help then if you want.
Exactly. Approve it and
just improve access to all the things that go alongside of it.
Totally.
As well.
Access to care and the right care and how that needs to look. So benefit verification. So what we do is we either really simple, and all that you need, whether it's us or another program, the insurance benefit verifier will either go onto a website if the insurance company has a portal, or they'll call. And typically we get it recorded, because when they quote benefits, we actually have to pull that, because you quoted they had coverage and now that they don't, and you're now saying that pull the recording. So we have all of that. And so basically our team will need either pick at the front and back of your insurance card, or your member ID, your group number. Those are really easily spotted on the card. And we, number one, see, do you have active coverage?
Yes.
And do you have just a primary insurance, or do you have a secondary insurance as well? So we'll talk about what that means in a little bit, especially when it comes to payments. And then we see, okay, yes, you do have coverage. And then it comes into, all right, well, what will it cost? Okay, they cover it and they'll pay for it. How much will they pay for, and how much will I be responsible for?
Yes.
And that was something that, like I said, I didn't realize. Yeah. Super eye-opening.
And this is where I think you do sometimes have a little bit more choice in the matter. So a lot of times, employers will offer one, two, or two or three different healthcare plans. And this is kind of a thing to think about, especially as you go into a new plan year of I'm thinking for next year, say I want to get bariatric surgery. I'm really interested in it. And I know that my company does cover it, because I had a coworker that's done it, or I know, I've looked into it a little bit, but maybe right now you're on the one where you pay less a month, the lower premium one, but you have high out-of-pocket expenses. Well, maybe switching to the one that costs a little bit more a month, but your overall expenses are lower in the year. That's something to that's where you can start to have some choices. And we'll talk a lot about, we're going to kind of go through what's a copay, what's a coinsurance, what's a deductible, all of those types of things. So that might make a little bit more sense, but that's really where you probably have the most opportunity to really change what your out-of-pocket expense would be.
Exactly. So let's dive in now, because that is a part. So when we verify your benefits, we tell you, yes, you have coverage. And then the next thing, like we said, what is it going to cost? So we will break it down. So the first piece of that is a copay. Yep. And what a copay is just fixed fee for a certain type of medical services. So we're considered a specialist. There's primary care. You might have to pay $20 copay. Maybe your specialist copay is $40, something like that. And sometimes you have no copay.
Yeah.
So that might be something. Now, if you have Medicaid, let's say, and in the state of Florida, that includes Sunshine, Simply, Aetna Better Health, United Community Plan, these ones have no out-of-pocket expense.
Right.
The government picks it all up.
Yep.
And so you would not have a copay. So a lot of this next part you can kind of drone out over, and you wouldn't have that. So you might have a copay for every visit. And that's, again, just a fixed fee for any type of medical service, even an office visit, or even the actual procedure itself.
Yeah.
And then how would you describe deductibles?
So your deductible is basically the amount that you kind of have to spend in the year before the insurance starts to pick up more of the tab.
Perfect. Yeah, I actually Googled exactly how to do it, and you literally just said it like word for word. Yes. The deductible is the amount you need to pay before insurance kicks in.
Yes.
So
now sometimes they'll cover some things before you hit your deductible. So that's where reading before deductible and after deductible, that verbiage will be in all your documents. So your copay a lot of times for your primary care doctor is just before deductible. You don't have to pay for that visit out of pocket. You'll pay the $20.
Yes. So exactly. So deductibles, there can be, an individual deductible. Mm-hmm. There can be a family deductible that everybody on that particular insurance plan, I have my husband and my 3 kids, there's 5 of us. And so if, somebody has more medical expenses, it could go towards the deductible. Right. And these typically deductibles are usually, in the 1,000 plus range. Right. Yeah. Is what I normally see. So, and that is why if you are thinking about having bariatric surgery and you've already met your deductible, in other words, the insurance is already going to be kicking in, then that means that you've already hit, let's say $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 deductibles. You want to have surgery before that typically calendar year or wherever that plan year starts over, which is usually January 1. So we get a big influx of people.
December is wild for bariatric surgery.
I'm buckling up. I'm give me all the operative time. And, I love it though.
I know you do.
I love November and December.
The day after Thanksgiving, I think you are already booking out.
Yeah, we're already going for it. And some people like to do it over their breaks and stuff too. Yeah, that's
true too.
So if you're a teacher or your kids are off.
Your office closes for the week between Christmas and New Year's. But still, it's a busy time. So and I think that's a lot of practices that they find that last week of the year, the last 2 weeks of the year are busy because people are trying to get in under that.
So get on it. We're coming up. You can still have your surgeries before the end of the year if you're highly motivated to complete your requirements that we'll talk about. And then finally, co-insurance. This is something I'm kind of embarrassed. I never really understood co-insurance before.
Yeah. So that's where you pay a percentage of, so say the doctor bills $200 for a visit. And you have to pay I'm going to do simple math, a 50% co-insurance. You would pay $100. The insurance company would pay $100.
Yeah. Right? And so that's exactly right. Yep. It is the percentage of cost you are responsible for. So you pay your copays, you hit your deductible, and now the co-insurance would kick in. Yes. And a lot of times what we'll see is 10 to 20%. 50% will be gosh, get it.
That was our last plan. My last plan was a 50% co-insurance.
Oh, you're kidding. Yeah. That's awful. Sorry about that. All so, anyway, we fixed that all because we're what are we doing? We're figuring it out.
Figuring it out. It's all good.
So the co-insurance 10% now for bariatric surgery, that would include the professional fees, which are usually a little lower. That might be a few $100 if that 10%. But then the facility fees is really where we estimate this based on a $20,000 $1,000 facility fee is what typically the hospitals, the surgery centers, they would get. And so then after you hit your deductible, all right, I hit that 1,000, then 10%, if it's 20 grand, you're going to be responsible for $2,000. So not arbitrary, but the good thing is you can either finance it through payment plans. You'll put down a down payment. You can do set up monthly payments, or you can even use something like Care Credit, which is like setting up a credit card. We accept that, for example. Sometimes the hospitals don't, but our practice does. And then you would apply for credit, and then that pays, and then you can go interest free for the first 6 months, 12 months, and then a low interest payment for 24 to 36 months after. So those are some ways to know it and understand it. We really try to break it down. And then we have an insurance coordinator. Monica can give you a call and she can really explain, okay, these are the...
Well, then there's one last term we haven't gotten to. Your out-of-pocket maximum.
Oh, yes, that's the best part.
Super important.
Yeah, that's super important.
So this is great.
Yes.
It can be great. I mean, it depends on, again, this is where choosing your plan can be really important. So when you have an out-of-pocket maximum, basically that is the maximum amount that you would be responsible for out of pocket in that plan year. And so again, like we said before, that depends on if you're an individual or if you're in a family plan. So if you're on your own plan, it's typically lower than if you're on your family. And so once you hit that though, you don't pay anything. Insurance covers 100% beyond that. And so say you have a $4,000 out of pocket maximum, you did your $1,000 deductible, your $2,000 for surgery, you might have $1,000 of other expenses. Again, this is all just making things up, but once you hit that $4,000, any of your health care, regardless of it's related to surgery, or if you go to your doctor, if you go get another surgery done. So maybe you get bariatric surgery done early in the year, and then you get your knee replaced later in the year. Then that one would be, covered basically once you've hit that spend.
That's such a great point. And a lot of times, if it's like 20%, you're going to just, whatever your out-of-pocket max is, you're going to hit it. And then at least protects you to a degree of like,
know that that's the most that it can cost you for the year for all of your health care. And again, remembering like this is for everything. This is not just, this doesn't change based on, okay, well, this is surgery, so we have a max for that. And then this other one has a max. No, that's for the year.
Yes. Great thing. And look at us.
I know.
Private practicing bariatric surgeons knowing all these terms.
That's just because I'm a nerd about it. And I've always read through like every insurance document I get, like from my employers. I like comb through those things.
I never even look. I'm like, oh my gosh, did I even, Aaron, pick the benefits. I have no idea. Like, that's why you got a 50% co-insurance. Like, well, this is awful, but it was an HMO. HMOs require referrals before every visit, which is just awful. A lot of it. So we're off of that. We fixed all that. Okay. So you finally decide, all right. And then one other thing about all of that, Medicare. So Medicare will cover 80% of your expenses. And so who's on Medicare? Medicare is if you are over the age of 65 or if you're on disability. And you would have that for 80%. And then the 20%, either you would pay for 20% is like the co-insurance out of pocket, or you can have a secondary insurance. So some people have, like, if you're like my parents, they're older, so they have like AARP as their secondary. That's a very common one. Or you could have even a blues. Anything can be a secondary. We see all kinds, and sometimes even people will have Medicaid as their secondary. So they'll owe nothing because you got 80 plus 20. There you go. 100% is covered by it. Now, let's talk a little bit about what are the pre-operative requirements. What is the policies? What are the different things to get you into the system and going? So there is a lot. There's a lot. This is a lot. So let's start off and talk about nutrition.
Okay.
So
I know about that.
Yes.
It's like my job.
That is your job. You're really good at it. So tell me, so I want you to summarize is there an array of what these medical directors have come up with to make these policies?
Well, so I think before I even talk about that, there's like the time frame. Because a lot of people ask us this, like, how long does it take to get from my first consult to my surgery? And if you're using insurance, that can vary. So for some insurance companies, and I think more and more now, this is becoming more normal, that they're not really putting a time requirement on it, or maybe 30 days. They're saying you have to take at least 30 days to do all of these things. But other than that, kind of go as quickly as you want. Some, though, will be 90 days or even 180 days. So 6 months for you that you have to do all of this stuff over. So you might find that we pull your benefits and we say, well, yep, this is great, but you have to do visits for 6 months. They call it supervised weight loss. And so you'll hear that term. And I think it's not a great name for it, because a lot of times we're not really like, you might lose some weight because we're going to be helping you. But a lot of times that's not generally, if I'm seeing those people, that's not generally my big goal with them. It's more about making lifestyle changes and things, which again, for some people can cause some weight loss, but that's just kind of the name for it. And basically for those people, you have to meet with usually a dietitian, or for some programs, maybe their advanced practitioner nurse or a PA or the psychiatrist, or, kind of anybody on the team. And you're meeting at least once a month within that. And it has to be consecutive months. Like, it's very particular that you have to talk about weight loss at those. Like, you have to talk about all of that for those. Sometimes they'll just give you a number of visits that you have to complete. So they might say a lot of times it's 12. You have to do 12 visits, but they can be over any period of time as long as they're on different days. So you literally could see somebody for 2.5 weeks back to back, and that would cover your 12 visits. Again, that could be with the dietitian, it can be with the therapist, it can be with even your primary care doctor, things like that, as long as like weight is kind of discussed in those. Other education, like we personally use an online platform that is called Nutri, and it teaches all of these things. And so some insurance companies will actually accept that as, that pre-operative education. It gives a really good background and baseline for the pre-op education piece. So
I mean,
kind of
can we just let's get candid a little bit about this? Okay. So 12 visits that can be done over any time frame. This is Aetna. Call them out. Okay. If you have Aetna, they have this.
Yeah.
I think it is so stupid. It is so dumb.
Yeah.
It's so dumb. Like, so if I see you 5 days in a row, so on Tuesday, what are your visits? I mean,
I mean, it is crazy, because I have some people that are doing that. Like, we're just trying to kind of, because the policy changed too. And this is what's frustrating, is we had all these people who were on track for surgery, and then all of a sudden Aetna changes their mind, and there's nothing we can really do about that. And so now, I'm seeing all these people either daily or every 2 or 3 days. And I'm like, well, how have things been since yesterday? Like, what's going on? Anything changed? And luckily we do, because we use Nutri and it's broken into these 12 segments. I can use it as like a really good framework for education. And of course, other programs who don't use that, their dietitians are, again, whoever their practitioners are going to, they usually have a plan in place of these are all the topics that we want to cover. And they might be sometimes in group sessions as well. So those would count towards those visits. So you might do some group sessions. They might be in person or virtual. But you're just kind of talking through, simple day-to-day changes. we're talking about protein. We're talking about the basics of nutrition. We're talking about exercise. A little touching on, obviously I'm not a therapist, but touching on some of, the mental aspect of it, habit changes, those types of things. So that's really it. But then sometimes, don't tell the insurance companies. I hope they're not listening. We talk about your kids, or like,
or
your dog. My cats usually visit with me.
Listen, it's all about lifestyle. And it's like you're busy running the kids around and all that. Like, okay, you get to know people, I guess. That is a perk.
I don't think that seeing somebody to help you is a bad idea.
Yeah.
I get where they're coming from with it, but when you see it in practice, and we've obviously seen the outcomes of people who don't do these types of things, and they do amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that, to me, really the important part, and we've talked about this before, is post-op care.
Yeah.
The pre-op education, and a lot of these things that we're going to talk about, they're checklist items a little bit.
Yeah.
And I do think absolutely education pre-op is super important, because you have to know what you're getting into and you have to understand that.
Yeah.
But until you're living it day to day and really in it, it's a lot of times very kind of just like, you can't grasp it. You can't wrap your head around it.
Right.
So it's kind of like, well, I'd rather spend my time working with you, after surgery versus being like, well, this is what protein is.
I know.
Because again,
that's all standardized. And that's why we have NutriHealth and all of that. But no, and that's very important, is that I always want to protect your time to have the individualized attention after surgery of a patient would need it for exactly that.
And that's the thing that I think a lot of the pre-op education is difficult, is it becomes a lot less individualized because you're just it's education. Yeah. You're just teaching. And it also is a really great way to burn out your practitioners. Totally. Because it can be very repetitive.
Oh, it's the worst. Like that. I know. It's like,
get the check in the box. To you. I promise I do. But I know.
But it's just, but again, it is getting a check in the box
8 times in a day.
Oh,
it's like,
God love you. Yeah. So that's one thing, is the education, the nutritional education done over a specified period of time. Yep. Then there's also psych evaluation, which is a one-time thing, which I'll tell you, I do not love that requirement, because I don't feel that anything is really going to come of a one-time evaluation. I think that ongoing therapy is key. So if you like the person that did your psych evaluation and it was a way of opening the door to this new person that you might not have pushed yourself to meet and to know, and you like them and it's convenient for you, and you find it, most importantly, something that can help you to just vent, talk, see things from a different perspective, I think it's super important.
Yeah. Or if you have history of like disordered eating patterns, I think that's where it can be more important, or like a diagnosed psychiatric issue. You have an actual diagnosis of something. But for a lot of people it's okay, great. We're going to talk to them, make sure everything's like going dandy and all good. And they send us the little letter, and
we got another check in the box. Here we go. We keep going. And then sometimes you might need a letter of support, which is like a letter of medical necessity. It's different from a referral. It basically says, I support your decision to have this. You might need a medical clearance. You might need, from our standpoint, clinically, you might need cardiac clearances or additional labs or a home sleep study, or maybe you have severe sleep apnea and you need CPAP compliance. So we make sure that you know what are your next steps, both from an insurance company and fulfilling all of their policies requirements, but also from our standpoint to make sure that you're most prepared.
Right. Because I think we can be a little flippant about there's check boxes and things, but they are there for a reason. And I think that's where it is important that you're always making that clinical decision of saying, okay, well, I see that you have had a DVT in the past. So I need to make sure that you're clear from, whoever's managing your blood and making sure that you're not going to have a clot after surgery. Or yes, you have severe sleep apnea. I need to know that you are using your CPAP machine. You are a smoker. I need to make sure that you are nicotine free before surgery, because that's something we'd be concerned about. So I think that, it's not, from our perspective, like some of these things are check boxes, but a lot of them too, it's for safety. It's not punitive when we give you a long list of things to do. It's just that we want to make sure that before surgery, we know exactly your health history, what we're getting into, like, so that we can make sure that you have safe outcomes in the long run.
Absolutely. And I always, one visual I love, which I think is such a cool exercise if you are considering bariatric surgery and you're listening to this podcast, is to write down your previous weight loss attempts, like the highs and lows. Like, okay, when did I start to really struggle with my weight? Some people were like, I was a big baby. Like, okay. Yeah. And then, and then I tried this. And then it helps, the pattern helps us to get to know you, but also to help you to get to know yourself. So some of it, take it seriously, go all in, and trust the process that, all right, this is going to get me to where I should be. And I'm going to do it, again, as safely and as effectively and efficiently as possible. All right. So they do all these requirements. So they have their initial consultation. We tell them this is individualized for you, exactly what you need to do. And then after that, you're going to go and you will have all of this list of things, this whole bundle of documents sent to the insurance company on your behalf. All programs do that. We do that. I'm sure every program does it. And we are submitting for prior authorization approval.
Yes.
And sometimes it's easy. You get the approval. We get the approval. Here's your prior auth number. approved for this procedure with the CPT code, the gastric bypass, 43644, sleep 43775. Boom, you're good to go.
On a certain date. And that's the other
on that date, date of service.
There's always, that's one thing people ask, when do I find my date? And it's like, well, at your final appointment, because then we have to submit to the insurance.
Exactly. Yep. So at your final, you have to do all the checklists. We've been burned. We've all been burned. And it's just a waste of your time too. We don't have, if they want a psych eval and you didn't do it yet, we can't submit.
We're not going to submit.
So we don't give you the date. Life happens. We get it. So you have to do all these things. And then you will have a place of service. And sometimes insurance companies require things like Aetna has something called IOQ, Institute of Quality. And we participate, we actually operate, we are an IOQ providers. There's also good old Blue distinction. So the Blue Cross Blue Shield, Anthem sometimes has this. Your employer may require this. This is based on excellent quality at a decent price. And you want to be Blue Distinction or Blue Distinction Plus? We are. So we have that too. And then finally, we're also with United, we are a Center of Excellence, a COE. So we have all of the special kind of seals of approval and stamps that we are really good there as well. Now, as you can imagine, it's not always so perfect.
No.
And just when you did every box, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You saw them 12 times. You got the lab. You got the psych eval. You got the letter that says everything. What gives? It gets denied.
Yeah.
And then I get to do a peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what. I spend my life on the phone with these medical directors. And the thing that's interesting about a peer-to-peer, you would assume it would be a peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
No. And it's not. They're doctors, but they're typically almost never in my career have I spoken to a physician that specializes in bariatric surgery. That's a bariatric surgeon.
Right.
I mean, you don't talk to that. So you're talking to people like, for example, one of the bigger things that might get denied that I have to work my butt off to try to overturn is revisions.
Yes.
So revisions, I'm taking a sleeve, let's say to a gastric bypass, and I might be doing it not for a CPT code morbid obesity, which is E66.01.
Yes.
Maybe I'm doing it for reflux with esophagitis, which is K21.00. And if that is the situation, is this podcast interesting?
Sorry, I'm just giggling at all of your CPT codes. This is her brain.
This is my life. This is all I do is write these damn numbers over and over again. And let's say we're doing it for refractory acid reflux.
Yeah.
Meaning you have been on medications. You have probably a hiatal hernia. You have reflux as evidenced by an upper GI swallow study where contrast may even reflux up to the cervical level of the esophagus, is aspirating, all those things. Sometimes I might be like, I'm going to need evidence by biopsy proven that there's esophagitis. I'm like, but this person is aspirating and I have all of this evidence. Why are we delaying this?
Yeah.
And so anyway, even with that, sometimes I'm like, oh, they'll get nasty, they'll get rude, they want certain things. And so anyway.
And I've heard you on those calls. You're like a bulldog.
I am.
She doesn't let down.
I'm not getting off the phone. I'm going to talk about gastric jejunostomies and bypassing the pylorus and the reason why this is I am going to talk to you about this because if this is a peer-to-peer, you better be showing up with your A game because I'm coming with evidence. I'm coming with the research.
Got gloves on.
I do. And then when you show up I don't know. Basically you can do an appeal. If it goes to appeal, I'm like, no. Yeah. We are not going to appeal. Because if it goes to appeal, the problem is it goes to basically the no man's land of all the others and millions of appeals that it's so easy to denied on a letter.
Yeah.
But if I'm sitting there pleading a case and then you as the patient, you should also consider submitting your own letters, calling them yourself, explaining in your own words, your own passionate story as to why, who would want to undergo surgery. If this is something though, that's going to make you better, feel better, you should be able to do it. So the appeals, I write appeals. I do it for even medical weight loss. I do the same process for medical weight loss as well. I submit it for a prior auth. I have to answer things. It's a little bit easier. It's on a website called Cover My Meds, for example.
Yeah.
So that's a lot easier. But if it gets denied, then it goes to appeal. Again.
And just once you get there, that's when it's I always say, denials are just, they're frustrating, but usually we can find, sometimes it's even as simple with a denial, the fax wasn't completed. So we sent 25 pages and they only got 23 pages of it. And it's like, well, okay, we have the psych eval that was the last 2 pages and we're going to send that over and great, done. Yeah. And that, so like denials are not the end of the road, and not that appeals are the end of the road either, but they are much closer to that point.
I mean, it's come to the point of strategy of like, I'll do a peer-to-peer, and it will, if they are like, it's denied, we'll go to appeal. I'm like, no, withdraw the case, withdraw it. And then let me resubmit it with whatever nonsense they need. Yeah. You know, whatever it is, or even non-nonsense, whatever it is. And then that whole fax thing, that is, I think, something that they absolutely intentionally did. Like, we have fax confirmation. You got it. What do you mean you only got half of it? Yeah. You're the only people on earth that didn't get all the facts. Yeah. And that's such a waste of time. Like, I have to like block time in my schedule so that I'm fully prepared. I have the chart open. I got this guy on the phone, and it's like, there's some medical directors I really, a few, actually, I'll say that I actually kind of like. Yeah. I do. Yeah. Well, and you get to ones that you get over and over. It's like, oh, hey, what's up? Yeah. How's it going over there? Yeah. You know, like, it's, you know, it is. It's fine. It's whatever. It is a process, though. Now, let's say after all this, your employer or your coverage, it excludes bariatric surgery coverage. So even people will say, oh, if your doctor writes that you have a letter of medical necessity, it could get covered. It's not going to get covered. Yeah. Unfortunately, if they exclude it, they're not opting in. It's nothing that they can do. It's nothing that even like Cigna can do. Like, unfortunately, like, we're just the carrier. Like, we're not the ones that make or break. That's your employer. Take it up with them. So what can you do? So you can go to your employer, but oftentimes that is something that is very time intensive. If you have a contact at BodyByBariatrics, we are happy to reach out to them and schedule a meeting just to explain it. We can even work out a system where if you're a smaller company, we can potentially even do a one-off with you where they can cover it perhaps. Yeah. So we can work out those sorts of things. And then finally, sometimes those things won't work. There is a self-pay option. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good option. And going back to something we talked about earlier, I think this has happened like once or twice since we've started, is that with the out-of-pocket maximum for a family, because of the insurance plan that somebody had, their out-of-pocket max was actually more than the self-pay rate. Yeah. And they went with the self-pay because they were going to end up or their deductible was so high. It was crazy. It was like, well, I'll just self-pay. Yep, exactly. So we have the most competitive self-pay rates in the country, period. Yeah. Because sleeves were pretty on par with everybody, but I adamantly do not want a patient to pick a sleeve versus bypass because the bypass costs more. So I take a lot less money on the bypass, so I keep the cost exactly the same. Yeah. So if you are a bypass, if you are a sleeve, we want to keep it so that you pick the one that's medically best for you. Right. Right. It's not just coming down to a dollar amount. No, exactly. And that's an interesting thing that we've seen too, but not as often, but just to bring it up, we've had some plans that will only cover one or the other. It's usually the sleeve, right? Yeah. Which is really frustrating. Yeah. Like the town of Lady Lakes, which is like very specific. It's very specific. Yeah. But they only allow a certain lifetime max. So some of these insurance companies will have only one bariatric surgery per lifetime. Yeah. Under that. So you can change insurances and get maybe a revision or something, but they'll say $25,000 maximum. That's it. One surgery period, which is like, that's okay. That's fine. We hope that you pick correctly. So you don't have to go through a revision. Nobody wants to do that. That's number one. But they're like, whenever there's like, only a sleeve. And then it's like, I get in there and if they have, so what are the reasons to go with a bypass over a sleeve? Number one, just to review, if your BMI is higher, if your BMI is over 45, you're going to lose more weight, statistically speaking, with the bypass, go with the bypass. Number two, if you have acid reflux, a hiatal hernia, you have to take medications, you have to sleep more upright, you have to avoid certain foods, you can't do spicy, go with the gastric bypass. Right. Saliva will go down easier, even in the recovery area. And finally, if you are a diabetic, pre-diabetic, insulin resistance, PCOS, infertility, visceral or central distribution to your weight, you should go with the gastric bypass. That is, if you don't have those things or really want the sleeve, of course, we can talk. So I think that for an employer, like they're giving you just a little bit because it's a little bit cheaper. I'm like, wrong.
Yeah. But it's just annoying too, because like they're just making a medical decision for you.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the other thing that's really frustrating with the insurance is like, this is like a company making medical decisions and not always doctors, or the doctors aren't reading everything. I mean, you hear now more and more on the news of these doctors that review for insurance companies, and they are copying, pasting denials and they'll do hundreds in a day. And it's like, well, there's obviously no way they read through all of those things. They're just, or AI is doing it now. And as much as, we love AI over here.
We do.
There's certain places where it's beneficial, but for it to be like denying insurance claims is
that's nuts. It's like you need a human with common sense.
Yes.
So if you want to get into the insurance
space, shockingly a few of those in the world.
Oh gosh. Oh, we could do a whole podcast on common sense, but we get it. I think that it's crazy. We've talked for almost 41 minutes about this already, but it is something that we get it.
Yeah.
You want it. You finally made up your mind. You are excited. Here we go. And then like, man, like I get to the finish line. I did all the checks. All of a sudden they're changing the goalpost where it is. Like, that's something that is just wrong. And it's hard. It's frustrating. Yes.
And, a lot of this stuff too, and why we try to help, we help as much as we can on the front end of these things, of getting the benefit verification, of trying to get that estimated out-of-pocket cost, because these things are so intentionally made confusing. There's all these terms. There's all these different numbers that are thrown at you. You're like, well, I'm spending this much a month just basically for the privilege of having insurance. And then you're going to pay on top of that, these deductibles, out-of-pocket maxes, co-insurances, co-pays, like all these different things. And so it's intentionally very confusing and difficult to wade through for people, so that they're, they get discouraged, or they make these 6-month requirements. And a lot can happen in your life in 6 months, where maybe in, February, you're ready for surgery and you're feeling good. But by the time August rolls around, it's like, oh no, I missed one appointment in there. Something happened. There was a family emergency and I missed my visit in July. So now do I have to start this whole thing over again? And it's like, well, at that point, I'm not going to do it, because now I'm just frustrated. I'm mad, or I'm just not in that same space that I was anymore. So,
and even medically speaking, I'll tell you, some of the most upsetting things of my career have been, I have certain patients who, like you said, I'm ready now because I have significant heart issues. Maybe I'm a heart failure patient. I need to get fluid imbalance. Basically, you're going to be optimized. Yeah. And every day that you wait, like, you're putting, it's putting you at a greater risk.
Right.
And I know sometimes, like, some patients are not life and death, but some of ours are. And I have had patients who they didn't win the race. They died in the process.
Right.
And it was like, man, like they were ready. And unfortunately they just couldn't jump through the hoops fast enough. And that to me is just like, I can think of a few particular patients over the years, and it's just like, I don't know. It's just really, obviously it's super hard. It's like, this is insane. These are real people here. You guys are sick. Like, I don't know. It makes me so mad.
I know. It is. It's really frustrating. It's like people waiting for transplants that don't make it to transplant, and it's not, obviously it's a different whole thing, but it's the same kind of thought of like, you just got to get them there faster. And I think reducing the barriers to it. And like you said, you're talking to these people, insurance companies, and I know other doctors are too, and other programs and stuff, they're fighting because it doesn't benefit anybody. Basically, if you're going to get the surgery, you're going to get it, whether it's next month or 6 months from now.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times all they're doing is it's like a weeding out process.
It is.
It's like college classes that you have to take that, make it just impossible for more people to move along to the next step.
Yeah, like, absolutely. It's like survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like,
but then a lot of the people that have the most probably need are going to have the hardest time getting some of these things done.
Yeah.
You think about ambulation to and from all these appointments. If people aren't able to do virtual visits or things like that, and you have to go to the doctor, you have to go into the office, you have to do all these things, like it can be really difficult for people who, So
yeah, well, we treat everyone,
yes,
and we really
we try to make it as accessible as possible.
Totally, we're 100% virtual. We have we will help hold your hand to get you through as soon as possible. If you are willing to meet me halfway, I will meet you there too. Yeah. So there is no weight limit to what we do. I've been adamant on that. I always said I treat this disease. I'm not going to put a restriction on it. I'm not going to add to it. And we want to help. We want to help you. Yeah. So hopefully this was helpful. I hope somebody out there, hopefully this broke it down, simple.
Yeah. Maybe. I hope if you were driving, you stayed awake. I know there's a lot of terms and things, and we'll make sure that we put out some, very simple things for you to check out about some of the phrases and things that we did talk about. So keep an eye out for those on our Instagram. So as always, you can find us on Instagram at DoctorXDietitian. You can find Dr. Dovec at Dr. Dovec. You can find me at hannahschuyler.rd. On our website, DoctorXDietitian. Keep an eye out. There will be an episode guide there as well. Yeah. So definitely check that out. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us via DM or via our website, anything like that. We're happy to answer.
You got it. All right. Until next time, my friends, good luck.
We'll talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.